Now, speaking of amazing Next.js features, I want to come back to that decision we had to make when we created a new Next project. There, we had to choose whether we want to use the app router or not. And I mentioned that there are simply two different ways of building Next.js apps, and these different approaches exist for historic reasons. There is the so-called Pages Router and the so-called App Router. Now, no matter which approach you choose, you're building full-stack applications where the pages are rendered on the server and where you use the file system to set up routes. That's always the case. But the Pages Router is the older way of doing that. This approach has been around for many years, and it's a very stable approach. And indeed, I cover it in depth in this course because it's very stable and because it's used in many projects. Now, as mentioned, with this approach, with the Pages Router, you build feature-rich full-stack apps with React and Next.js. So that's the case with this approach as well. But we then also have that other approach, the App Router, which is a relatively new way of building Next.js apps. It was introduced with Next.js 13, so not too long ago, and it is now an approach that is marked as stable, but still relatively new, and at least in my experience, also partially still buggy. Nonetheless, it's the most modern way of building Next.js apps, unlocking many amazing modern new features like React server components or server actions, which are features I'll explain in greater detail throughout this course, of course. Therefore, it's the future of Next.js, and that's why in this course I of course also cover that. I simply cover both approaches. But we'll start with the app router after this React.js refresher section before we then take a close look at the Pages router thereafter. So that by the end of the course, you know about both approaches and you're ready to work on any Next.js project, no matter which approach that project is using.